What's up, everybody? Today, we're going to talk about two stocks that I think are deep value, and they are significant positions in my portfolio. Now, I try to find undervalued companies that the market is ignoring. So naturally, I'm going to look at some stocks that are a bit different than you might see on other channels. But these two, I think they're just being completely overlooked. The first company is one I don't think I've heard anyone else talk about on YouTube. Even though it is at a 52-week high and has had an incredible run, it is still trading at just over 3 times earnings. You heard that right. It trades for 3 times earnings. They just increased their dividend. They have a lot of revenue that is contracted out going forward, and no one is looking at this company. The second stock is a market leader across multiple industries with over 50% operating margins. It's expanding internationally, growing at double digits, and it is trading for a multiple of 6 to 7 times earnings, 6 to 7 times free cash flow. So those are the companies we're going to talk about here. As always, if you get value out of the video, subscribe to the channel. If you want access to my templates or just support what I do, then consider following me on Patreon. Now, let's get into it. And the first company is Global Ship Lease. They just reported earnings and the stock is up about 9%. They're at a 52-week high. I've owned this company for a couple years, including the dividends. This has basically been a double for me. It is such a simple business, and in spite of the price increase, I think it's still cheap. They own container ships and they lease these container ships out to the large transporters. We're talking about Maersk, MSC, Zim, Hapag-Lloyd. Most of these ships are on charters of several years. It might be even 3 to 4 years for some of their ships. So they have a ton of forward visibility on their cash flow. Roughly 2.5 years of forward contract cover. Their 2026 ship days are 96% accounted for. Their 2027 ship days are roughly 75% accounted for. So even though shipping rates are very volatile, and this is an extremely cyclical industry, for Global Ship Lease, their near-term earnings are very predictable. I've listened to the earnings calls for this company for the past 8 or 9 quarters, and they basically always say the same thing. We made a lot of money, we paid down some debt, we paid out dividends, we're looking to possibly take advantage of opportunities to improve our fleet. Just to drive home how much money this company is making. I mean, they're on track to make over $10 in earnings per share for the year. This company is still a $35-ish stock. They're trading for less than 3.5 times earnings. They just announced in this earnings report that they're increasing their dividend to $2.50 a year, so that's going to be a 7% dividend. Google says 6%, but taking into account this increase, this is now a 7% dividend, even with the price going up. Now, it's true, there are a number of very cheap shipping companies in the stock market, but many of them have very poor corporate governance, or, I just don't like their management. For Global Ship Lease, they care about their shareholders. I think the management is honorable. They're not looking to do what many shipping companies do, which is massively dilute shareholders to increase the size of their fleet. We see they've actually delevered their balance sheet. They've been paying down their debt over time. This is a stronger company today than when I bought a couple years ago. We see that being reflected by their borrowing costs. It's come down massively over time. Daily interest expense going down over time. And I think this company is cheap for a few reasons. First of all, no one wants to buy a shipping company, very cyclical sector, especially container ships. For container ships, the order book is pretty significant. What that means is there's a good number of ships that are coming onto the market, so that's going to increase the supply and thus lower rates. However, GSL ships are really more these small to mid-sized ships, and the order book there is much smaller actually. It's still meaningful, but it's not the same supply glut in the future, and honestly, with all the uncertainty around trade and tariffs, that actually could be a tailwind for the smaller and mid-sized ships that are in GSL's fleet. They're more flexible, and if you're worried about tariffs make trade inefficient. That actually is often a tailwind for a shipping company like GSL. A large shipping route like China to the US, which would run on a very large ship, that will have to be diverted to, China to the rest of Southeast Asia, which those routes would be done on much smaller vessels. Even still, it's impossible to predict in the future what charter rates are going to be like. When GSL's current contracts expire, they might have to renew these contracts for much less than they are currently getting paid. But here's the thing, this is a company that again is trading for just a little over 3 times earnings, and they have about 2.5 years of forward contract cover. The value of their contracts plus simply the assets on their books are worth more than the market cap of this company. That's in fact essentially why I bought the stock a couple years ago. At the time, they had maybe 2-ish years of forward contracts, maybe a little less, but they were trading for a little over 2 times earnings. It just seemed like a no-brainer, and on top of that, many of their ships are on their books for what I think is significantly less than their fair value. Book value here is about $1.6 billion, and a lot of this is the value of the vessels. We see that's sitting at $1.9 billion, and the way book value often works for something like this, you buy a ship for say $100 million, great, that goes on your book for $100 million, and then every year you depreciate that ship on your books. So 15 years later, that ship might be on your books for, $50 million. It can sometimes be hard to know if book value is overstating or understating the fair market value of these assets. However, they have sold off 3 ships in the past year, and all of those ships sold for greater than the value that they were carrying them for on their books. So overall, especially considering the earnings power of this company, I don't actually see a reason for this to trade at a discount to their tangible book value. And getting up to tangible book value for GSL would still imply another 30% upside on their stock price. Meanwhile, I'm getting paid to wait with their dividend, so I don't see any reason to sell this stock today. When I bought the stock a couple years ago, I didn't consider it a long-term hold. I do consider this a low-quality company. It has no moat, but you can still make money with companies like this if you buy them at a dirt cheap price. If the stock reaches something I consider fair value, I'm probably going to sell. I'll make that decision when the time comes. For now, I'm going to remain a shareholder. All right, now let's get into the second stock we're going to talk about. If you've been following the channel, you probably guessed the company based on the description I gave at the beginning of the video, but we are going to talk once again about Kaspi, ticker symbol KSPI. Now, Kaspi also released earnings a couple days ago. It was a pretty decent report. We'll take a look at it. The stock jumped about 6% in the morning, and then it trailed down. It was up maybe, about 3-ish% on the day. But in spite of this, unlike GSL, Kaspi is basically at a 52-week low. If we look over the year, down quite a bit. Now, this is a significant position in my portfolio. I was adding pretty much whenever the company was hitting $80-ish a share. My average price is just over $80 a share, so I'm still down a bit on my position here. Keep that in mind. Maybe biasing me here. Now, if you've never heard of this company before, I'm just going to give you the quick overview. I've talked about them a number of times, so I don't want to bore regular viewers. But there are many companies that try to call themselves a super app, and most do not fit the description, but Kaspi certainly deserves the title of a super app. Within Kazakhstan, almost everyone uses this product. They're the market leader in payments. It's common for merchants to ask cash or Kaspi. They have a huge marketplace, similar kind of to Amazon. They have a fintech segment that is involved in loans, primarily consumer loans, and they keep on expanding their offerings within these segments. They started e-grocery not too long ago. Now they're dominating that space. They have a travel sub-segment that's similar to Expedia. They are dominant in so many areas. And yes, again, this is in Kazakhstan, so in case you're wondering why the stock is cheap, well, that's a reason right there. And when I say cheap, I mean it is dirt cheap. We are talking a company with 50% operating margins that is trading for roughly 6 times forward free cash flow. 6 times earnings, and they essentially have no debt. They have a net cash position. And the quarter was really a solid quarter across the board. Double-digit top-line growth in each of their segments. If we just look at their entire core business in Kazakhstan, they grew their top line 20% while growing bottom line 12%. This is in spite of several headwinds they were facing recently. Regulations around smartphones, a shortage of iPhones in Kazakhstan. That's a big product in their marketplace that they couldn't rely on. We've also seen an increase in taxes in Kazakhstan, as well as a significant increase in interest rates, and that hit the bottom line of their fintech segment. This number they're reporting down here, so plus 20% year over year in fintech, these are the numbers that they say they would have hit if all of these factors were the same as the year before. So in spite of all the hurdles, still posting double-digit growth. Now, I should note all the numbers we're looking at here in their report are in local currency, the Kazakh tenge. It's down about 5% against the dollar year over year. Over the past 5 years, the Kazakh tenge has fallen about 4-ish% a year against the dollar. So in US dollar terms, you kind of have to knock 5% off these numbers. That's still solid double-digit growth on the top line. Bottom line, you'd be looking at, maybe 7-ish% year over year. Again, with all the headwinds they're facing, that's still, I think, a solid result. Now, inflation in Kazakhstan is going up. There is currency risk here. So when we're thinking about the future, that's definitely something we want to keep in mind. Going through their segments, e-grocery growing very nicely. Kaspi has added integration of other wallets into their app, similar to what PayPal is doing with PayPal World. Kazakhstan has a lot of tourists from China, so they integrate it with Alipay. They say that's been quite successful here. Kaspi Restaurants, another area of the world they're trying to conquer recently. Seems like they're making progress there. Everyone loves to talk about AI nowadays. They say they're using AI in their marketplace. They claim it makes better content, leads to more clicks and more sales. And now let's talk about possibly one of the reasons that the stock has been under pressure recently. This is a very profitable company, and they used to return quite a bit of that cash to shareholders in the form of a dividend. In 2025, they cut their dividend and they said, we want to use this cash for growth. We're going to buy a majority of Hepsiburada. This is a Turkish marketplace company. We're also going to buy up a Turkish bank, and we're going to try to expand there. I think there's a number of investors who are attracted to stocks based on high dividend yields. When you have a company like this, especially a foreign company, and they cut their dividends and now they're not being paid to wait, they get impatient, they jump ship, and that gives opportunities to us. Now, management has said we are focused on long-term shareholder value. And I should point out, management is very aligned with shareholders. The CEO owns almost a quarter of the company. The chairman owns about a fifth of the company. Collectively, management owns roughly half of this business. And in spite of that, they haven't really sold that many of their shares. We'll get to someone who has been selling in a moment. But I think management has done a fantastic job scaling out this business. And if they think trading roughly a year of cash flows to expand in Turkey is worth it, then I think they deserve the benefit of the doubt. Now, they point out Hepsiburada top line has been accelerating since they acquired them. First quarter, year over year, they had some declines. There were also boycotts in Turkey. I don't want to get into that right now, but this quarter, year over year, plus 16% on number of purchases. They're applying what they learned from Kaspi to Hepsiburada, integrating more payment options. They say they've improved the look of Hepsiburada and the marketing tools. Revenue for Hepsiburada up 22% year over year. That's quite a lot. First 9 months, first 3 quarters, only up 11. Here's the thing. This is not contributing to their bottom line yet. They say that they have positive EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, but you can't put EBITDA into your pocket. As far as net income, the actual bottom line here, they are losing money on Hepsiburada right now. And they say, yeah, we're investing in the future. Right now, we're concerned about quality, making this business excellent. We think it will add to earnings per share down the line, but we're not concerned about just cashing in right now. So all those numbers we talked about earlier of Kaspi growing 20% on the top line and 12% on the bottom line, those excluded what's going on in Turkey with Hepsiburada. Once you add in Hepsiburada, great, you're adding a ton of revenue here that they didn't have last year, so growing 70% on the top line. That sounds amazing, but it's not an accurate reflection of what's going on. And when you look at the bottom line, Hepsiburada is again losing money. So net income only up 1%, basically flat year over year. So in US dollar terms, that's actually down year over year. So if you were just looking at the numbers and you didn't know what was going on with the insides of this business, you would say, what are you talking about growth? They're not growing. But that's also not a fair reflection of what's going on. I believe that this Turkey segment will have some value. It's hard for me to know how valuable this will be to the business. Management says we believe our investments here will significantly enhance long-term growth. And certainly if they turn Turkey into a profitable geography for them, that would be a huge tailwind to Kaspi, but it's not something I'm counting on happening, certainly anytime soon. Now, I want to talk about one more reason why I think the stock is under pressure, and that is Bearing Funds. That's a foreign investment fund, so it's a little difficult to find detailed information on them, but they have certainly been selling down their position. They own roughly a quarter of the company. They invested in Kaspi when it was just a startup, and this has been probably about a 100x for them. I think it's likely that the Kaspi ownership is the vast majority of the value of this fund, and they simply want to cash out. Ever since the stock IPO'd, they have been a seller. We see the CEO, the chairman, they're just holding their shares. Bearing Funds here, they're selling. I don't know when they'll stop. I don't know if they want to sell their whole position. To be honest, I don't view this as the largest red flag. I mean, imagine if you had a fund and one stock was essentially the entire value. It was a 100x and you invested in it as a startup. You couldn't liquidate. And now all of a sudden it's trading on a major US exchange and you get the chance to cash out and you just want to do that. They own roughly as many shares as the entire rest of investors combined. So if they're selling, that is a ton of sell pressure on the stock. I think that's probably another reason why we have this opportunity in front of us today. So let's go to our sheet and let's see what we can expect for a return on our investment in Kaspi at today's prices. I've converted everything in my sheet to US dollars. Now, looking at my assumptions on the top line, I was assuming 10% growth. And again, we're talking about dollar growth here. In dollar terms, they're outperforming this number right now. But if we want to be conservative and take into account the fact that there is risk with high inflation in the tenge right now, maybe we should bring this number down in dollar terms. Let's call it 6% I'm going to put in here. Operating margin, this has been, roughly a 50% margin company. As they integrate Turkey, margins are going to come down a little. I think I'll pull this back to 45 here. Free cash flow margin, keep in mind, you should really think about this more as what is going to come back to shareholders. What capital is going to be returned to us in the next 5 years? If they're using all their free cash flow to grow in Turkey, you can't really double count the numbers by adding in aggressive revenue growth and giving yourself free cash flow. Still, management has signaled that they are going to start returning cash to shareholders again. I didn't mention this, but they announced they were starting a $100 million buyback. That's not a ton relative to the stock price, but they also signaled that they were likely going to reinstitute a dividend next year. I think these are reasonable returns to expect in my base case. In 2023 and 2024, when they did have a dividend, they were returning roughly double this to shareholders. And as far as a multiple, I'm giving this company a 10 times multiple. And yes, this is significantly higher than what they are trading for right now. So yeah, I am assuming multiple expansion. I think it's warranted with such a powerful company. I believe I've been pretty conservative with my other assumptions. And in this case, you're looking at a 25% annualized return. That is roughly a triple on your money over 5 years. I would ignore these numbers here, by the way. This is an old sheet. My new sheet focuses more on total 5-year return rather than, just what is the fair value today. I should also point out, if I just put in a 6 times multiple and I don't assume much in terms of expansion, you're still looking at close to a double on this stock over 5 years for what I think now are very conservative assumptions. For my bear case, I assumed just 5% growth on the top line. I mean, even if we pull this down more, 3% growth on the top line, this would be if the tenge really crashes against the dollar. Operating margins, I'm pulling back quite a bit. I'm assuming they don't really return much at all in capital to shareholders, and I'm only giving them a 5 times multiple. A 5 times multiple for a company like this. And still, in this scenario, you're looking at a positive return, 3% annualized return over 5 years. Now, what's the upside? What's the reward? Right now, they're doing roughly 15% on the top line in dollar terms. I basically kept that. I gave them 14% in dollar terms on the top line over 5 years. I kept their margins consistent with what they are now. I made their free cash flow margin a little closer to what they were returning to shareholders in 23 and 24, and I gave this company a 15 times multiple. Obviously, that's way higher than what they're trading for today, but for a company this powerful, I don't think that it is something crazy. And I do want to have some understanding of what the potential upside, the potential reward here is. And in this scenario, you're basically looking at a 50% annualized return on this stock. This is about like a 7 to 8x on your money over 5 years. That scenario would put Kaspi stock in like the 500s in the year 2030. So overall, what do I think of the risk reward here? I think it's fantastic. I like this company. I think that they are dirt cheap. There certainly are risks. Again, it's Kazakhstan. There's currency risk. There's government risk. This is not a recommendation to buy the stock. I just give you my opinion and tell you what I'm doing with my money. And for me, this is a significant holding. So with that said, if you got value out of the video, subscribe to the channel. If you want to make spreadsheets like this or just support what I do, consider following me on Patreon. And as always, if you agree or disagree with anything I said, leave that down in a comment below. And I hope to see you all in another video.